Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Let me take the opportunity to say a very special welcome to Deputy British High Commissioner to Jamaica, Mr. Jonathan Cook, representatives from the Ministry of Education, Skills, Youth and Information, particularly Ms. Terrian Thomas Gale, who's the acting CEO for the ministry. In her absence, let me acknowledge Executive Director of NET, Latoya Harris Garte, and the NET team on the ground here. Let me also acknowledge Head of the Jamaica Teaching Council, who's here with us this afternoon. We say a very special welcome to you as well. I also say welcome to Dr. Mark Richards, our lecturer for this afternoon's very important discussion. Other members of academia, I see Dr. Brown from the University of Technology here, and other educators in the room, and I know we have a number of guests online as well, so I say a very special welcome to each and every one of you. My name is Javon Keys, and the pleasure is mine this afternoon to be your Master of Ceremonies for this very important national discussion. Of course, we are celebrating STEAM, and no, it is not steam that's produced when we have condensation. It is not that steam, but I'd say a steam that's just as important, because of course we know steam is very important. If we're talking about science, and I know there may be some science educators here, the original locomotives were powered by what? Of course, but which means that that industrial revolution was what? It was considered a steam-powered industrial revolution. But this revolution that we're undertaking now, yes, it's steam powered, but this steam, ladies and gentlemen, of course we know it's science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. And while some of us may not find ourselves in the mathematics part of STEAM, and I have my hand up, I know we will find ourselves in STEAM, because STEAM is for everyone. And of course, this important week, which runs from January 26 to 30, is being held under the theme, Creating Solutions, Driving Change. And of course, the idea of STEAM is that we must be able to find solutions for national challenges, and our students can help to drive that change, because guess what? They have the solution. Of course, we're so happy to bring this event to you, of course, being brought to you in partnership with the Ministry of Education, Skills, Youth and Information, along with the British Council and the National Education Trust. And I'm going to ask you to put your hands together for key partners who have come together to ensure that we're celebrating this week. And of course, this is helping to build the idea of critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and creativity. That is why we're having a National STEAM Education Week. Of course, there's quite a bit of work that has been done here in Jamaica as we move from STEM to STEAM. And of course, that's going to come up in our discussion a little later on. And of course, this evening this afternoon, we are engaging in this lecture and cocktail reception. But of course, I know many of you are super excited to be here as we anticipate the start of tomorrow's Expo, where many of you, some educators, have been preparing your students to put on your displays, and that's why some of the educators who will be recognizing a little later on are not in the room. So with that said, ladies and gentlemen, let me move along with our program as I invite our Deputy High Commissioner, Mr. Jonathan Cook, to come forward and extend greetings. Please make him welcome.
Good evening, everyone. Distinguished guests, partners, educators, friends online, it's a pleasure to be with you here tonight, and you'll be pleased to see that it's just a single piece of paper. If you ask employers anywhere in the world what they need most right now, the answer is the same: talent that can think critically, create boldly, and innovate fearlessly. And that is exactly what STEAM education develops. This week is a celebration of Jamaica's growing community of thinkers, makers, and problem solvers, and the incredible potential that they bring. It is a real pleasure to be with you here this evening as we open the National STEAM Education Week. This reception and guest lecture are a fitting way to begin a week that celebrates ideas, innovation, and the talent of Jamaica's young people. STEAM education matters because it connects learning to real life. It challenges students not only to understand concepts, but to apply them to problems facing our communities, our industries, and our economy. In that way, STEAM becomes a practical tool for national development, resilience, and inclusive growth. From the UK's perspective, supporting growth through trade and investment is a key priority for us. We know that Jamaica's global competitiveness depends on a skilled, creative, and adaptable workforce. That is why the United Kingdom is proud to partner with the Government of Jamaica and the British Council to strengthen STEAM education and to help young people build skills that are valued both here, at home, and in global markets. This week's focus on design thinking, engineering approaches, creativity, communication, and pitching ideas speaks directly to what today's employers, entrepreneurs, and investors are looking for. These are the skills that turn innovation into enterprise and education into opportunity, whether in technology, the creative industries, manufacturing, or the green economy. As we begin this week, I encourage educators, industry leaders, policymakers, and students to continue working together to connect classrooms to careers, learning to livelihoods, and Jamaican talent to global opportunity. I wish National STEAM Education Week every success and look forward to the ideas, partnerships, and solutions that will emerge in the days ahead. Here's to a week of ideas, inspiration, and innovation, and to the young Jamaicans who will carry this country forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much, Deputy High Commissioner. Of course, while you were reading your very well put together and on-point speech, I wondered to myself, was there ChatGPT involved? Because it was so good. And why I'm asking that is that we cannot be speaking about STEAM without speaking about the context of artificial intelligence and how that has revolutionized how you as educators and the ministry and stakeholders have to now reimagine the classroom and how we utilize those tools, because before the lesson plan would take you maybe days and weeks to do, but now 5 minutes, maybe 30 seconds to get that lesson plan going. But of course, you've set very valuable and important context about the importance of this our celebration. And we thank you so very much on behalf of the entire team here for your support. On behalf of Jamaica, we say thank you to the British Council and the British High Commission in overall for your support continuously for not just STEM, but also supporting education in this country. And we know that this discussion about STEAM is going to be so critical as we have our students preparing themselves post-Hurricane Melissa, post-Hurricane Beryl, post the COVID-19 pandemic, there is so much for us to now consider about how do we ensure that our classrooms evolve, including STEAM and whatever else is next. Because we know with education and curriculum, that always evolves. So we're at STEAM now, and as we blink, we might be at STEAM plus something else. So the conversation today has to be STEAM now, but what next, and how ready are we to ensure that our students are able and ready to take on that paradigm? Of course, as I said to you earlier, the week has a major event tomorrow where we're going to be engaging our young people and seeing some of the things that they are going to be able, that they have developed. And I know many of them have worked hard, and I see some teachers down there nodding and say yes. And I know that tomorrow's engagement, you will look forward to engaging with each other and sharing ideas, because that's the importance of a forum like this. A forum like this allows for stakeholders from across the world to bring ideas, solutions, foresight when it comes to challenges that they have overcome, and how we here in Jamaica, the little but Talawa country, can take some of these ideas and make them even better. Deal? So with that said, I have the distinct pleasure now, ladies and gentlemen, to invite a lady who is so big on education in this country, and I know STEAM is very, very important to her. And as she steamed her way in this afternoon, I know she's so, so happy to be here. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Latoya Harris-Garte, Executive Director of the National Education Trust, as she makes her way to the stage.
So, all protocols having been observed, I want to thank the Master of Ceremonies. Good afternoon, everybody. So, story time. You know, STEAM in action. Do you know now the police has a telephone at every little corner, and they plug into that telephone and they tell you, all right, your license thing, the thing, everything, whatever. Technology in action. Yeah. So I had a nice encounter with the officers. What I know now is that my bank has failed to pay over my money to my insurance, but is them deal with it. But I never get a ticket for that. You'll get a ticket for blocking the intersection. No, not the intersection, the pedestrian crossing. Even if you're trying not to block the intersection, go block the intersection, because a pedestrian crossing will cost you $10,000. But what is beautiful about that is that the police were using the technology and could tell me everything about my vehicle. And it didn't require me showing them anything. They took my driver's license, they said, all right, you live here, whatever thing, and they verified. Technology in action. And that's why I had to steam in here today, so that we can have more rollout of technology across all sectors and have an embrace of more things. Dr. Flowers, I'm happy to see you. So the function of education is to teach one to think intensively and to think critically. Intelligence plus character, that is the goal of true education. And that's Martin Luther King Jr. That quote reminds us that education is not simply acquiring knowledge. It is about developing the ability to think critically, solve problems, and make informed decisions with integrity. Clearly, I failed to critically think through my stop today, and I did not make an informed decision, which has now cost me. But we are trying to ensure that our children don't follow in my steps, and with STEAM education, we are empowering our students to take the principles of science, technology, engineering, arts, and maths, and to apply them creatively to solve real-world challenges. True learning in STEAM equips young people to innovate, to design, and to come up with solutions to real-world problems and make meaningful contributions to their communities and the nation. Distinguished guests, educators, partners, and most importantly, the bright young minds joining us today. It is my profound pleasure to welcome you to the inaugural STEAM Education Lecture and Cocktail Reception. is a cornerstone of National STEAM Education Week, which is observed nationally from January 26 to 30, 2026. And our theme is creating solutions, driving change. And Hurricane Melissa showed us that we need to really find some creative solutions to some of our everyday problems, because we have real world issues to deal with. And we are facing climate change. Who would have thought that they said this a near category 6 storm. That's what they're defining it as, would have hit poor little Jamaica, because the last storm we remember of this nature is, I remember is Hurricane Gilbert. Yes, for the young people in here, I'm sure, you have no clue, but I remember eating lots of, actually, my parents, my family ran a supermarket, and we had lots of stock, so it meant eating the stock before it spoiled. So I remember, I think that's probably why I don't like chicken to this day. There's scars. But this week is celebration, yes, but it is for us a time to reimagine. It's a time to be creative, and it's a time for us to use STEAM to shape not only our future and our lives, but also that of our nation. So today, we're honored to have with us our featured lecturer, Dr. Mark Richards, researcher, lecturer. Did you tell them that you're even dabbling in music? All right. Whose insight and expertise will illuminate the global possibilities of applied STEAM education and demonstrate how innovative thinking can solve real-world challenges. The purpose of this event is more than informational, it is visionary. It is to build a shared understanding of STEAM education as a discipline that empowers our students to create solutions, not merely absorb theory. It is to show that innovation-driven thinking can spark change across Jamaica's most critical sectors. And it is to recognize that educators are the catalysts who guide, challenge, and inspire students to turn ideas into impactful action. Through today's lecture and discussion, we aim to, 1, unify our stakeholders around a national STEAM imperative, ensuring that students see the relevance of what they learn in school to real-world solutions. It's to showcase applied learning at STEAM in Action Expo tomorrow, and I hope everybody will be at Expo tomorrow, because that's where the children are going to showcase their talents, and we have to really nurture and support them. It is for them to demonstrate the creativity, critical thinking, ingenuity, and show that what they're learning is not some abstract thing at school. And it's a powerful tool for problem solving. It's to position our students and educators as agents of change, providing that STEAM education has tangible, measurable impact in communities across Jamaica. So as we celebrate this inaugural event, let us remember, STEAM is not only about knowledge, it is about action. It is about fostering confidence, resilience, curiosity, and leadership in our young people, giving them the tools to innovate, to solve problems, and to shape their world. Each student here today holds the potential to be a creator, a thinker, a change maker, and our role is to nurture that spark and to help to grow into a flame that will illuminate Jamaica's future. I encourage all the participants to enjoy activities, ask questions, explore boldly, and embrace the unknown. Witness solutions in action, challenge your own thinking, and remember that seeds planted today in a classroom, in the lab, the workshop, will blossom into solutions for tomorrow. On behalf of the National Education Trust, the Ministry of Education, Skills, Youth and Information, and our partners eLearning Jamaica and the British Council, I warmly welcome you to the exciting event. I thank you for your dedication to advancing STEAM and for believing in the power of our students to transform our nation. Let us celebrate, imagine, and be inspired. Together, we are creating solutions, driving change, and shaping leaders of tomorrow. Thank you.
And thank you so very much, boy. I mean, at least from the experience you had with the police, we could speak a little bit about the STEAM and how we've come a far way, no longer thinking about that handwritten ticket that would take weeks to actually show up on the system. But now, in an instant, fortunately or unfortunately, and don't ask me how I know, but if you get a ticket, it shows up instantaneously. And on the bright side, you can pay it at the same time. So let me say again a very special welcome to those of you joining us online. And I really hope that you are listening keenly. And I know we're about to engage in a very important discussion because, of course, as has been shared by all the speakers so far, STEAM is so important. And every facet of society that you think about. If you're a journalist like me, you can find yourself in STEAM. If you're an educator, clearly you are squarely in STEAM. If you're a diplomat, you're in STEAM. If you're an educational policy leader, you're in STEAM. If you're a photographer, if you're in social media, because we are now in the age where everybody is into selfies, TikTok, STEAM. Si hablas español y si enseñas español también, eres en STEAM. If you speak Spanish and you teach Spanish, you're in STEAM too. Which means that we all can find our place in STEAM. And I know that this gentleman who's coming up next will help us to realize how each and every one of us has a place in STEAM and how we must ensure that the future generation that we're inculcating knowledge on is able to understand where they fall in STEAM. So ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Mark Richards is a distinguished academic, innovator, and advocate for inclusive science and currently serves as Senior Teaching Fellow in the Faculty of Natural Sciences at Imperial College London. Now, holding a BSc in Chemistry from the University of Manchester and a PhD in Physics from Imperial, his career reflects a dynamic fusion of research, entrepreneurship, and deep commitment to equity in STEM and, by extension, STEAM. Now, of course, a part-time DJ of Jamaican heritage with roots in Westmoreland and St. Catherine is my parish. This gentleman is a passionate advocate for the synergy between science and the creative arts. Ladies and gentlemen, I know the lecture that we are about to endure is one that will be thought-provoking, and I invite you all to listen keenly to Dr. Mark Richards as he comes up. And who knows, he might give us some special DJ tune, who knows? But ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for him.
Do you remember out of many? We are one, come we link up, time to get strong. Jamaican people,
okay.
Do you understand?
We'll play this towards the end, but thank you for that intro. Okay, so again, thank you for those warm words. All protocols observed, or probably not, because I don't know what they all are, but I do welcome. I am grateful to be here, humbled to be here, and delighted to be invited to share what I know about STEAM, and also just my journey, which hopefully will help to show some insight into what STEAM can do, both as an individual, but also what it can do for the nation as a whole. So this is a picture when he was then in opposition, so you can see how long ago that picture was. Also, my hair was a bit darker, so clearly it was a while ago. But it was a breakfast prayer, a breakfast sort of prayer. I was going to say prayer meeting, but a meeting with the then younger generation. And at the time, he mentioned about, just during conversation, the Prime Minister at the time, he mentioned, why can't Jamaica be like a Singapore? And I mentioned that I was at Imperial and I was very much a strong advocate of STEM at the time and science and why it's important. And the reason why he mentioned Singapore is because they are also very technically proficient. They have a strong, robust economy and so on. But of course, Jamaica is not exactly a Singapore because we also have a lot of culture, a lot of arts, which is why STEAM seems to fit much more than even STEM. So, under the general umbrella, I've said raising aspirations through embedding STEAM in education and beyond, because it's not just about education for the sake of education, it's about laying the foundations for real progress and upliftment. Let's hope this works. Well, that's the overview, a very short one-word overview. I've been told that time is limited and I've got more slides than time available, so I may move quicker than usual. I think most of that has been said, apart from maybe I'm also the founder of something called the Blackett Lab family, which is the UK's first network of black physicists. Now, to put that into context, when I was doing my PhD, I didn't know any black physicists at all. So to actually have a network shows that over time, as I'm saying, one quark or full basket, well, that's what happened there, and they're doing some great things. I'll maybe talk a little bit more about them if time permits. This is more of a visual representation of my sort of early career journey. I was born in the UK. As I said, my parents came from Jamaica, as mentioned, as part of, I guess, the Windrush generation. The main thing really is that the sort of green represents, or yellow, represents time in industry, and the blue represents time in education, for example. Okay? And as you can see, I haven't changed at all. Right. So what did Marcus Garvey say, one of our national heroes? This was an instruction pretty much just over 100 years ago, and it was an instruction to parents who said, you must teach the higher developments of science to your children, for within science and religion stands our only hope of withstanding the evil designs of modern materialism. So what does that really mean when we break that down? What Marcus Garvey was saying was that, yes, we know we are a creative people. That's just in our DNA, if you like. But he was instructing us 100 years ago that we need to get more proficient in the sciences and be more part of that conversation, because presumably he could foresee that there was going to be this technological revolution, if you like, and if we're not part of that, we'll just end up being consumers of technology, almost like slaves to technology, instead of actually being part of those who can help create and shape it so that it benefits all. So that was 100 years ago. Another thing which I had sort of inquired a long time ago, who was the first documented engineer? And it turns out that it was someone called Imhotep from about 4,500 years ago. He was an Egyptian from Nubia. But the thing about Imhotep, he wasn't just an engineer. He was all those other things: architect, physician, astronomer, philosopher, poet, scribe, etc., chancellor, musician, high priest. So when you see someone like that, you notice I've sort of highlighted those ones in red because they're definitely not science or technology. But yet, this is according to Encyclopedia Britannica, okay? So the point is, this is nothing new. Back in those days, you didn't separate all the different subjects. You made inquiries about nature or about, the universe or whatever it may be, and you tried to answer those inquiries using all the skills. And of course, the brain has a logical side and a creative side. So why wouldn't you use all of that to try and address and answer those questions? So, why did I get into STEM? And why did I do so much around trying to, especially around schools and outreach? Because when you think about STEM now, we haven't got to STEAM yet, but when you think about science, technology, engineering, and maths, and we're trying to, at the time, funnel lots of young people into those areas, at school, it's only science and mathematics that you're actually taught when you're actually at school. And you have to be good at those to get into the rest of it. And so that's why I realized, well, there's an issue here then, because we need to be much more, we've got to strengthen what we do in the schools. Otherwise, it's just talking as opposed to actually doing. So that was how I sort of got into it. And why STEM in particular? Because STEM is at the heart of research and what I call technical innovation, okay? And innovation is important because it creates demand. So, if I've got an iPhone 16, if you hear the 17 is coming out, all of a sudden there's a demand for millions of this iPhone 17. And it might only be a small technical innovation, but it's created the demand. When it creates demand, it creates jobs and generates wealth, which then benefits society as a whole. And so the other thing is the scientific method. So in science, it's a process. So it starts like this. You observe something and you ask a question, why does that happen? Why is the sky blue, or whatever it may be? And then you have your own theory. You come up with a theory to say, well, okay, this is why. And then the key thing is that you want to be able to describe the theory mathematically, or at least describe it in terms of maths, because then you can make a prediction about it, and then you can go and test your theory. And so if your observations don't match up with your predictions, you modify your theory, adjust the maths, and you keep going round and round in that way till you get a deeper and deeper and deeper understanding and a more and more refined sort of a theory, if you like, that describes what you're trying to inquire about. Now, why is that important? Because that effectively is what informs what they call scientific research. So it leads you into that research area, unknown territory, if you like, where you're trying to understand more about how things work, for example. Okay? But of course, in the real world, research isn't just scientific research. It could also be technical or market research, financial research, legal, intellectual property. There's lots of different research. And again, you can see a lot of those researchers don't necessarily rely on just the sciences, for example. So you need this collaborative, cross-disciplinary approach to actually get research done. It can't be contained just within one discipline. So, STEAM now, it's basically, as we know, it integrates the arts, but it's not just like an add-on or something that you've tried to shoehorn in just to include people. It's more than that. STEAM is actually a shift in mindset, because what you're really saying is, well, actually, we know that STEM is important for the reasons I've explained, but actually, if you leave it just to those who are very focused in STEM, then you're missing a large part of the creative input from humanity as a whole, okay? So, and it also doesn't just include art, it could be music, literature, and all of those things, which are important because technology is playing so much of a role in all of our lives in many different parts, that if we do not have our own creative input into it, then basically those technologies will be imposed on us, and so it clearly won't necessarily work in our benefits. So how does that fit in with STEAM education? Again, that's more of a mindset. It's not saying that there's a new subject called STEAM that teachers have to teach. It's more about preparing students to be globally competitive by equipping them with the tools to be able to tackle 21st century problems and having the skill set, if you like. And understanding how STEAM can be implemented in the classroom, that's key, because that's where it starts. And it can start from any age at all. You could be in what they call the infant school, and you could take some kind of story, I don't know if you know Little Red Riding Hood, and then the big bad wolf, and huffs and puffs and blows the house down. You could just stop and say, hold on a moment, what was the house made of? And what could we do about this house to make it stronger? All of a sudden, you're now going into another area, engineering, for example. So there's many different ways. Now, this is a UK, what I've called the school to PhD pipeline, just to show the different stages at which these various qualifications, if you like, are completed. And the STEAM education can be implemented across the education pipeline, as I said, from early years all the way up to undergraduate and beyond. There is nothing that says that you get to a certain stage and then you start with STEAM. It should be embedded in the thinking. And if you think even as a newborn baby, you start to understand STEAM, you throw the ball in the air, after a while you work out that it comes back down again, and certain behaviors already start to be embedded inside. So in that sense, it's nothing new to the thinking. If anything, what may have happened in the past is that some of that thinking was compartmentalized. But now what we're saying is, no, you should encourage that. You should encourage that holistic approach so that you can be a rounded problem solver. Okay, so how you may, generally, how you might want to motivate young learners into STEAM is general things. Make it relevant. So ask things about problems about the local environment or things that they can relate to. Make it engaging, of course, make it challenging, and also nurture the inquisitive side of young minds. Sometimes that can get stifled, but actually, I know when I was young, I was probably very annoying asking too many questions, but it's that inquisitive nature that actually is what makes you sort of more independent in terms of problem solving and even in your thinking. And so, a quick word about invention or innovation and what's the difference, really. So, an inventor, usually you're given resources and then you come up with ideas, new ideas. That's what an inventor does. Well, an innovator takes new ideas and generates profit out of them. That's it, basically. So an example might be, say, Nikola Tesla, who was a prolific inventor, but didn't make a huge amount of money out of all of his inventions. Whereas someone like Edison, Thomas Edison, he's known as a prolific innovator, had his name on hundreds and hundreds of patents, but didn't really invent too much of it himself. He had many inventors working for him. So the reason why I'm saying this is because innovation, it's sort of, there used to be this sort of linear model that you invent something and then you innovate a product and then it diffuses into the marketplace. And that was very much grounded in what they call scientific research. But as I've said, there are other sources of innovation now. Innovation doesn't just have to be scientific. It could be driven by the end user. Sometimes you release some software and the end users drive how it develops, for example. Okay? Or it could be pushed by sort of supply or demand. Another thing about innovation, which is very important, is that in the early days, this is like, if you like, 20th century innovation, some key ones, you know, railways, roads, etc. And what it does, it starts off slow. It's like an S-curve, and then it starts to rise, okay, after it reaches market traction. And the thing is, these tails can be quite long, 20, 30 years before it really hits market. But that's not the case anymore. Internet and the way how information has moved moves much quicker. So here's some example of some more recent developments. And this is the time it takes to reach 50 million users. You can see that cars, it took 62 years when they were first invented. But now when we get to something like, YouTube took 4 years to reach 50 million. Twitter took 2 years. And I'd suspect new software now is even less. So the point is, innovation is moving quickly, very, very quickly. And if we don't be part of that innovation process, we'll just get left behind as it continues. Okay? And then the other thing is, of course, innovation has a life cycle. Why do you think they keep releasing a new iPhone? I'm not really picking on iPhone, but why do you think they keep releasing a new one? Because there's a life cycle. It follows this, in maths, it's called a normal distribution curve. Okay? In the sense that you have some early adopters, and then it reaches a peak, and then eventually it dies down. So what do? When this take-up reaches a peak, they're ready to launch a new product so that it can then continue to generate revenue, I guess. So again, innovation is about a family of products as well. If you're a forward-thinking organization, you'll be working on new innovations to replace older ones, to continually grow the product offering. And that's the same with a nation. We have to be continually innovating. Okay? So, I won't go too much about that, but if you were going to introduce a new product, these are some typical questions you'd ask. What is it? Who would use it and why? So in other words, what is the market? How would it work? That's the, if you like, the technical side. And also, how would you stop someone from copying it? So how do you protect what you've invented, if you like? And also, how could you make a profit from it, or at least keep it sustainable? Okay? Right. So I'm only going to touch on some of my own work in air pollution, only because it's a global issue and it gives an example of how we use different elements of STEAM to try and address this problem. So yes, as I said, we all know pollution is a global issue. Many years ago when I came here to Kingston, it used to be an issue in the morning. There was this mist many, many years ago. I don't know if it's still there. I hope not, but that was how it was then. But this was London in the early 2000s. This is the pollution levels, and that red blob is Heathrow Airport. That's what they wanted it to be, and it ended up not being anything like that. Instead, there was lots of headlines about, at the time, they were going to be fined by the EU when they were part of it, and all these sorts of things. So we were engaged in a project which tried to link transport with air quality. So to monitor transport activity and at the same time monitor the air pollution at the same time. And at the heart of that is waves and science, in the sense that when light hits a molecule, it vibrates and gives off some more light, which you can detect, and you can use that to find out what's in the air and how much is in there. And different molecules have different fingerprints. I won't go too much into the science, but one thing I will say is, just to put it into context, what we see in terms of light is a very small amount of the amount of light that is out there. And what we hear in terms of our audible range is a very small amount compared to what's out there. So that's where we operate in with our sensors, but in reality, there is light that we can't see, like infrared or microwaves and so on, UV. Okay? And so what we did, we combined two techniques to create an open path system that could monitor a plume of smoke or when a car drives past. And then the idea was to make it more of a unit that could go on vehicles, so make it a closed system unit, if you like. Okay, and that's essentially what we did. This is just showing how we redesigned the optics to look something like this, that you could walk around with and actually monitor air pollution on the move, and also put it on a vehicle and start doing sort of mapping. At the time, we'd commercialized it and formed a company which had many different cross-disciplinary inputs. And this is like the engineering phase. So we moved away from that violin case to something a bit more like this, where you can see engineering is important if you actually want to make an idea, an actual product that people want to use. So again, every element within STEAM has its place. Okay, this is just some data to show how we could map pollution in a dynamic way. This was a scenario based on some sensors in East London, for example. And so we developed visualization tools to show how pollution varies with the traffic and with the main roads, for example. And now there's lots of global challenges. That was just on air pollution, but we can look at some global challenges. Some of them have been mentioned already. Health sciences, environment, energy, example, big data, lots of challenges. And a STEAM approach is best placed to address these challenges. There's no one single discipline that can address these challenges. So it needs that collective approach. Now, representation is also important because you don't want people to feel excluded or feel like they're not part of this journey. This was me in the Space and Atmospheric Physics group. Just in case you're wondering where I am. There I am. Okay. Now, the reason why I put that picture up, as I said, at the time, I didn't know any physicists at all. I didn't know any physicists. There is one other person like me, but I only saw him actually at this photo, at that event. I never saw him afterwards again. I don't know if it was a one in or one out, or I don't know, but I never saw him again, so I can't actually say who he is or whether he was definitely one of the physicists. But the point is that when I look at their careers, on the far left there, Michelle, she's now the astronomer royal for the king, okay? This person, he became the Welsh secretary, he was Welsh scientific advisor for Wales, sorry. He became the head of the European Space Agency. These are some big careers out of that group, and there are many more who did many things. So there's always a question that was burning in the back of my mind. Why were there not more people like me doing subjects like this at places like there? Why not? And that's what led me on that journey to try and find out why. And when you look at the figures, this is just some UK figures against different ethnicities. In terms of achieving the top grades across all subjects, we're operating at half the rate of the other groups, for example. So that means we were getting further and further behind. Similar in terms of degree outcomes, for example, in terms of numbers of first-class degrees, if you look at the group, which is Afro-Caribbean, really, compared to the other groups, again, it's not really underperforming, but the numbers are quite stark. Okay, so we formed a group. Over time, when I had the odd students and so on, we take them under my wing and we link together to then form this group called the Blackett Lab family, then became more visible online, and then started connecting with others in other departments across the UK. And now we put on programs. This is a program, summer schools for year 11s and 12s, for example. And we also have programs for undergraduates. And now we get lots of support and collaborations with lots of different groups, including The Voice newspaper, for example, and Jamaica National Bank. So what I'm really saying is that just by having that motivation to say we start from somewhere, we can actually go a lot further. Now, I just want to touch on innovation within our own culture, and I'm going to say sound system culture. Sound systems is obviously originated big in Jamaica. It was also big in the UK. But there are many areas where innovation happened. For example, the speaker design, the amps and preamps, okay? Aspects of the turntable, EQ, microphone, sound effects, and then a number of different music genres came all from this culture. So this is all innovation, for example. So here is a hand-drawn preamp circuit diagram by a sound in the UK. And there was someone called Mr. Errol who used to build those amps. And they were designed specifically to make their sound a particular way. Similarly, with the speaker cabinet designs, there was a design by a Wasifa Sound called the folded horn design, which somehow made its way into actual PA touring rigs. So my question is, where does the intellectual property go? That's the point I'm making, really, that was innovation. Innovation, I already told you, generates wealth. But if we don't know how to protect it, then I'm afraid that's what happens. And innovation doesn't always have to be technical. I don't know if you've heard of this person, Sir Hans Sloane. No? Okay. So he was a collector, a British collector back in the 18th, 17th century. And he actually spent about 15 months in Jamaica, collecting different things, you know, like plants and all that sort of thing. And he actually founded the Natural History Museum. But one time, he had some cocoa. You know cocoa, when you grate a cocoa and put a little nutmeg, and he drank it, but it made him feel a bit nauseous. So the locals decided to put milk in it, okay? Now, he liked it. It made it feel a lot better. But he also returned to England and sold the patent to Cadbury's. So in fact, that's more the brand that you're probably more familiar with. But that drinking chocolate actually came from Jamaica. Now imagine if we had, I say Jamaica, had had a piece of those royalties over all those years, it could have made a real difference. So I'm just showing you the importance of things that we do and think that are not valuable, but on a world global basis, our culture is very much valuable. If you travel around the world, even if I go and you want to buy a flag, somehow the Jamaican one is slightly more expensive. You pay for that extra value, so we should know how to capitalize on that to help rebuild the nation. Okay, a little bit more about, I suppose, the technical side and how it's encroaching on the creative space. So, for example, as DJing and remixing is what I like to do, remixing up everything. I like to reggaeify everything. But the point is, if I was to break down the processes of what you have to do, I realized that all you're really doing is manipulating sound waves in a particular way. Whether it's beat matching, EQing, isolating the vocals, all these things you do, you're manipulating wave files. And once things move from record to digital, then it becomes much easier to manipulate those wave files just by knowing about maths and computing. So this is, again, how it encroaches. And then again, with AI now making strong inroads, a lot of the underlying knowledge is already there. It's all about how you apply it creatively. So I'm going to sort of wrap up towards the end now with what Bob Marley said. Bob Marley, what did he say? Well, as we all know, he didn't start off making the music that he's famous for. It was a bit more ska, blue beat, a bit faster. So a journalist asked him, how did you change from that ska, blue beat to what we know now as the one-drop reggae? And this is what he said. While walking through Coronation Market on the way to the market, or the studio, I should say, I studied the movements of the people and tuned into the vibe. Now, it sounds like what Bob Marley would say, but let's break it down. What does it mean? He studied the movements of the people and tuned into their vibe. We know vibe is short for vibration. So he's watching the natural frequency of the people, and then when he got to the studio, say, yeah, let me kind of make it on that vibration, so that people don't have to stop to listen to it. They can carry on doing what they're doing, and it just resonates. And that's the whole point. He wasn't a physicist, but he somehow knew about resonance and how if you can resonate at the right frequency, you can just lock in, basically. Oh, by the way, that photo, do you know who that is? Yeah, Michael Jackson. I thought I should point him out just in case, I can't just fly past and not mention that Michael Jackson was there when he visited Jamaica. And the rest of the Jackson 5 are there. You can probably tell by the afros and things. But nice photo. Okay, so what do we mean, resonate? So let's take, for example, this. Okay. It's a baby crying, right? Resonance. The music resonates because it's at that natural frequency. It's a bit like this one. Oh, I don't know how to stop this one. Hold on. Right, sorry about that. Now I play that one. Even with animals. About a thing. Every little bit gonna be alright. Singing, don't worry about a thing. Yeah, the red one's got some moves. Gonna be alright. Rise up this morning. My lips are rising sun. I said he got some moves. Right. So that's my point. Right. So my point is that, again, the music is powerful. Music is a powerful medium for resonating with people. And Jamaica is known for producing very good, powerful music. So another thing that I could mention, let's say in art, you could embrace, this is an example of, there was an artist who was an assistant on outreach programs, but she was primarily an artist. And we were working on something called the International Year of Light. And she got to understand about something called polarized light. And when you shine it through a filter at a certain angle, then you can get different colors. And this can be recreated by using just sellotape, arranged in different ways, and you will get, and you sort of place it, a white light behind it, and then you look through a polarized filter, like if you've got those fancy Ray-Ban glasses with the P with polarized, you look through them, and you will see the image come to life. So, does anyone want to quickly guess what that image is before we? Any ideas? No. All right, let's play it. Okay, you see? Right. Oops. Okay. But you've got the idea, okay? So again, and the reason why I say this is because this is something that you could actually do even as a school project. It doesn't take a huge amount of extra, tech, but you can learn a lot about art and about science just by applying it, the two together, for example. The other thing I like to do is that sometimes, even in the technical side, I like to try and bring in the creative side. So this was a paper for the Institute of Mathematics. I was talking about sampling theory, which is a technique which is used to analyze basically sensor networks. But it's also the same technique that's used for digitizing music. Okay, it's called sampling theory. So I wrote a paper on that, and actually it included elements of research, maths, music, sound, and even equality and diversity and so on. So what I'm saying is don't be afraid to bring your authentic self into those technical spaces, just as technology is encroaching in the creative spaces, because at the end of the day, we can all benefit. And similarly, within the black community in the UK, we're not shy about making them aware that there is this network of scientists who are supporting the community in different ways. And so, again, this was an article in the Voice newspaper introducing the Blackett Lab family, for example. So my concluding remarks, concluding remarks. The choices we make today directly influence the opportunities that present themselves in the future. So we've got to make the right choice now, because if we get, at the end of the day, the decisions I made a long time ago is why I'm even here today, without me realizing that. So that's the importance there. In this ever-changing world, the one thing we need to be is versatile. We've got to be adaptable and resilient. A STEAM mindset that forms the foundation for many different careers, not just the technical ones, technical and creative. You should still have a STEAM mindset. Technical and research skills can also enhance your creative passions, a bit like music or sport, for example. And by remaining true to your authentic self, you will always have something to offer the world. So I'm very keen on keeping to your authentic self and not just simply trying to blend into the so-called cultural norms, because that just seems to be what you're meant to do. So I'm just going to summarize my own journey. Someone said, I think it was he said, steam, what's after steam? Well, for me, it's steamed rice. Okay? And we know what the STEAM is, right? Science, technology, engineering, arts, and maths. And of course, the ED is for education. You can't get to this without being underpinned by a strong educational foundation. And once you have that STEAM, where does it lead? Like I said, to me, it leads to rice. And we all know rice is a staple in any community. But what does it mean here? Research, innovation, culture, and enterprise. And all of those elements will then lead to a very strong, successful, resilient, and globally competitive Jamaica. So I think the final thing I would say is, as I said, music is a powerful thing. So you may have heard it already, but it was a track that I wrote with a friend of mine who's also a DJ called Action Man in the UK. And it was really to reinforce this message of the talk. We sent it over to the organizers. They liked it. We put some visuals to it, and I hope you like it. So now, I don't know at the back if you can finally play the track, and I think that will be it for me.
Do you remember out of many? We are one. Come we link up. Time to get strong. Jamaican people, do you understand? For technology, there is no apology. Let's not run from this one. It's coming in tough, it's coming in strong, it's coming in. Yo, wait! On the whole on no man, it's hard to beat, so we need a new guy. With enough scientists, artists, engineer, and some serious mathematician. It's in the young, it's in the young. The young generation. Make we use the power we have right now and activate the plan. So we're not ready for join up and to one. And guess what? Hey, let's show the world that we can. Jamaica, Jamaica, make we let our some steam. If you listen to the lyrics, you will know where we mean. We want the place pretty, we want we place clean. Jamaica, we run like a well-oiled machine. Jamaica, Jamaica, make we let our some steam. If you listen to the lyrics, you will know where we mean. We want the place pretty, we want we place clean. Jamaica, we run like a well-oiled machine. Youths them fit on technology, soldier down in the school. We need to fat off them folder. Do it now, no before them get older. If it's sound cold, me only have a sound colder. The only way to raise the youths is if them stand on we shoulder. So science, technology, engineering, arts and maths. The whole of who come link up round. Yeah, we have some work to do. Jamaica Jamaica, make we let out some steam. If you listen to the lyrics, you will know where we mean. We want the place pretty, we want we place clean. Jamaica, fi run like a well-oiled machine. Jamaica, make we let out some steam. If you listen to the lyrics, you will know where we mean. We want the place pretty, we want we place clean. Jamaica, fi run like a well-oiled machine. Jamaica fi run like a well-oiled machine. Do you remember? Out of many, we are one Jamaica.
Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Mark Richards, exceptional presentation anchoring for some good context into the importance of STEAM and how each of us has our own part to play. And we're not quite done with Dr. Richards because we have another conversation that we're gonna continue with this afternoon. But ladies and gentlemen, another round of applause for that very important discussion that was just had. And some pivotal points coming out of that for me is the fact that STEAM has to be embedded from early, because already when we're interacting with our children, whatever we're doing, we're playing with different toys, it's STEAM, but you're not really talking about it as if it's STEAM, but the reality is that STEAM is everything. Our gestures, our conversations, it's all STEAM. And the fact that we must encourage STEAM at all levels in the system, and perhaps even beyond the classroom, the ideas of how do we potentially engage with the workplaces, because the reality is that, and we're gonna have that conversation now shortly as well, about how do we engage with STEAM beyond the classroom, and how do we bring into the fold persons who may not be the earliest adapters in the STEAM conversation, because that can be a challenge from time to time. And I love how you brought into sharp focus your real-life application of research with STEAM and climate change, showing overall how important it is for us to match our conversations about STEAM with real-world problems so we can find real-world solutions. And of course, I know our Parliamentary Secretary, Sir Marlon Morgan, and we thank you so very much for joining us, sir, would agree that STEAM is definitely the way to go. And as they engage in that important photo opportunity, not to worry, we're going to get some questions answered by Dr. Richard shortly. But I do hope that you took a few important points away from the very important conversation just had, as I invite Dr. Richards, and also the fact that you spoke about inclusion. And the reality is that we must find a way to have every student see themselves in STEAM. So even if you're not the math student like myself, and I say that lightly, but the truth is I did well at it, but I didn't like math, and I didn't see myself in a world doing anything math related. The irony of that is that for the last 8 years, I was business and finance reporter, which means I have to deal with numbers and balance sheets. So I know my math teacher, Miss Tasha Angus, who knew that I detested math, and used to say, if you need to go find stone outside and count it, you're going to get it. But there is value in that, because my entire class, all of us got grade 1s with straight A profiles. So, sir, I mean, you just really set some important context for us, and the idea that our theme, creating solutions, driving change from classroom innovation to national impact, is quite critical, because when we talk about STEAM and what we are doing in the classroom now, as we advance the idea of Vision 2030 and beyond, because what many people fail to realize is that development is not a signpost. So when we get to 2030, development is going to continue beyond then. And of course, as we implement the Sustainable Development Goals, what we're doing now is squarely aligned with that. So I wanted to start off by you advancing the context you've already set, because some people probably in this room may be asking, we were at STEM, and now we're at STEAM. Why now? And why is it at this point still important?
Good question. I think hopefully I've answered a lot as to why STEAM is certainly more fitting for a nation like Jamaica, because as them say, we're little but we're tallow.
And we're full of vibes. And
right, full of vibes, and we definitely push, you know, I don't say punch above our weight, but we are definitely have an impact, a worldwide impact, especially in the cultural space, and other spaces too, but in that cultural space. And so STEAM seems more fitting. If you said, well, we want Jamaica to be a STEM country, it would almost imply that the things we were doing before somehow wasn't right, and now we have to switch. But it's not that. You add to what you do and embrace new innovations as they emerge. And to be fair, even within our culture, certainly in the music side, they've been, you know, we have embraced technology in many different ways over the years, in different ways. If you think about the infamous Sleng Teng rhythm and how that came about from a keyboard, you know, the early Casio keyboard, experimenting with it, and look what it led to. So my point is that we're not averse to embracing technology, but we don't want to feel that we're going to have to give up something in order to do that.
And speaking of that move, I mean, in your experience, and you've held quite a number of roles, you've clearly observed a number of jurisdictions shifting from those various techniques to STEAM. So what would you say is the single biggest shift required for STEAM education in Jamaica to move from theory-heavy instruction to more solutions-driven problem solving? And we know many of the educators in this room, I know from the ministry, they are taking steps to help them in the classroom to do that. But what would you say is that single thing that is required to make that shift?
I mean, of course, there's no one thing that you could just press that button and it happens. But what I would say, to me, the most important thing is the shift in mindset. That's it. Just the shift in mindset to know that you can do it and to know that it's possible. Then that in itself actually will change the game. If we approach it from a viewpoint that, well, I'm not sure if it's going to work, then we're already slightly defeating ourselves. It's really the shift in mindset. And I know that the young generation, they will then be born into that mindset. So they won't even have to compare it to something before. That will be how it is. But we have to set it for them.
And I mean, as you mentioned, the younger generation, digital natives, we see them inherently, they're already able to use the devices from they've come out of the womb, some argue. But the truth is, in our system that's cross-generational as well, from the education system standpoint, we have educators who have been in the system for quite some time. Some of them have gone from the various curricula before. Now we have the national standards curricula. Now we have had STEM and now STEAM. And some of them may not necessarily be the easiest to shift that mindset. So what would you say to them who may not necessarily be the earliest adapters to this new shift that's required for this advancement?
I mean, I accept there will always be some level of inertia when it comes to change. But I think the key thing here is that if you think about, let's say you're an educator and you ask yourself, why are you educating the child? Maybe before the mindset was to prepare them, you know, to be useful in the workplace or something along those lines. But I think even that mindset has to change to say we're preparing them to be problem solvers and critical thinkers. Yes, that will inevitably mean there's work to do and they will get work, but it may not necessarily be in the traditional sense of, you know, perhaps when I was younger, where it might have been working in a factory or something like that. If you become, you know, an independent problem solver and critical thinker, there will be plenty of work for you to do. And some of those jobs don't even exist right now, but they will exist by the time that they develop those skills.
How would you encourage educators to move that real-world mindset into the classroom as we help to enable our students to become STEAM ready?
Well, I suppose, apart from all of what's been said around this, and that should actually act as some encouragement, not just from what I've said, but everything else and the initiative behind it, I think it's a case of, if anything, just showing that there are relatively straightforward ways how you can just nudge things along at the level that you feel comfortable with, just by asking those questions. I know that, let's say if you're more on the creative side, I know that from science it starts from asking questions. There's never anything wrong with asking questions. So if you are an educator and you're thinking, well, I don't know enough about physics or science to teach young people that. You don't really have to. But if a child comes to you and they're interested in those things, you just have to know how to encourage and nurture that and signpost it such that the talent can grow. So it's just about being more informed as to where to support the right people, and also be able to recognize, what the young people are actually genuinely interested in as well.
The classroom is one aspect, but we have an audience that's online that also includes parents, and they may be saying, I want my child to be STEAM ready. What can I do from early to encourage that before they even get to facing Mr. or Miss in the classroom?
I think it's like anything. I mean, Marcus Garvey actually did give that instruction to parents 100 years ago. So, but what I would say is that it's not a question that they have to teach their child. It's the same thing as it's not a question they have to teach their child the new technologies or the new science, etc. Or it's more about just encouraging them and supporting them. That's all. Back in the past, sometimes parents would have a fixed idea as to what they want their child to do. You must do a trade. You must do this. You must become.
You must be a teacher.
A teacher, for example. But in reality, I think the most important thing is, I would say as a parent, you should want your child to maximize their potential and, of course, be happy. And if you can achieve that, then I think you've done a great job as a parent.
Now let's move back to the classroom and some of the support systems that need to be in place. I mean, there's some who describe educators as innovation enablers. What does that mean in practice, and what policy or system level changes would you say are required to truly empower educators to play this important role?
Okay, innovation enablers. I suppose it's pretty along the lines of what I've said previously, that you want to support and nurture talent. So young minds, to a large extent, they are naturally innovative, inquisitive definitely, which can often lead to innovative ideas. If those ideas get shut down and stifled early, it makes them less likely to want to be more, inquisitive. So I think as a teacher or an educator, the best thing is to, where possible, encourage those ideas, encourage them to think beyond, and where possible, support them. I think that's all I can say. It's all have to be done on a case-by-case basis, but that's where I would say in that respect. Again, it's all about the mindset. Rather than see them necessarily as annoying or disruptive, actually, if they are genuinely inquisitive, try and feed that mindset, because that will lead to benefits in the end.
And from a macro perspective, I mean, I spoke broadly about the context of our own development, and we have our various local and global developmental goals. How should the STEAM curricula be deliberately aligned with Jamaica's priority sectors? And of course, we know here in Jamaica, agriculture is a priority sector for us. Energy, tourism, construction, logistics, and technology. So how do we get that perspective into the classroom so students are solving real national problems as opposed to the abstract or the hypothetical?
I think you've basically identified it. Earlier in the slides, I mentioned that one way is to make it more relevant. And so you've touched on areas that are particularly pertinent to Jamaica. And I would even try and, where you can, get industry to offer up some of the problems that they want to, would like to be solved, and get young people to, investigate those problems, come up with solutions. Just by doing that, they will be more motivated because they know it's for a real cause, and you'll be surprised at what they can sometimes come up with. And then, of course, it's also helping to collaborate industry with education, because that's an important component of any economy. You've got the industry sector as well as government and education as well. So I think all of those have to work together to say, reach out to industry and say, are there some mini projects that you may not have the time or resource to work on, but you'd like someone to think about for a while, and then get a group of young, talented people to work on it, write a report about it, and who knows, that company may well want to, take it further. And that's what I think. Offer up what the problems are and allow young people to address them.
From a policy and education standpoint, how do we measure the success of STEAM? So yes, we're saying that we now need to have it in our classrooms. We now need to make it linked to all the real-life solutions. But how do we know at the end of the day that this is what makes sense?
Okay, so I think there's no one metric you would use, but there are a number of different areas or indicators. Some of them are quite straightforward. Yes, you can look at, destinations after leaving school, what sorts of, as you know, with technology, you can probably track what happens to students once they leave school, what industries and sectors they go into. You can look at potentially certain economic indicators, but I think more overall, it's more about, you will actually see a change in the culture and mindset, the shift in the culture and mindset. So maybe, I don't know, if someone said, yes, I'm a very serious mathematician, they might get a slight strange look now. But we hope in maybe 10 or less years' time, if someone says I'm a serious mathematician, they'll say, that's very good. We need people like you. Keep it going. That's a shift in mindset. That's all it takes.
All right, now we have a number of key stakeholders in the room, and a few of them we actually are going to ask to chime in and give their thoughts on the presentation that was just made. But before we do so, for the young man or woman who may be in this room, or the young man or woman who may be at home watching, and they still don't quite see themselves in STEAM, they're not sure where they fall in that, because they're not necessarily seeing themselves in the science portion, probably definitely not the math for some of them. For some of them, they may only see themselves in the arts portion. What would you want to say to them if they're even not seeing themselves at all in that STEAM, or maybe the steamed rice as you had on the screen, and what would you say to them?
Well, okay, I think if there are young people who don't feel that they can be part of this, then we, as the educators, and I suppose those who are the powers that be, we've failed to some extent. We've made them feel that way, because this is something that the nation needs. So unless you don't feel part of the nation, I don't see how you can't see that you can find your place to support this initiative, because it covers a broad area and it's tackling real problems that can lead to improvements in the quality of lives, not just for you as an individual, but for the nation as a whole. So I think I'd really question why, why they don't see themselves fitting in, and maybe explore that a little bit more. But it certainly won't be because they don't have the potential or the skills to be able to make strong inroads in those areas. Because this is something that anybody, especially from a young age, can go into and make a real impact, as hopefully I've shown it to some extent.
Absolutely. I mean, I'd love to see the steamed rice acronym one more time so that we can have that up so people can remember it, because that feels like something that would stick in the minds of people. But ladies and gentlemen, I want to ask at this time Chanel Bennett-Edwards, who's in the audience, just to come on up and share some perspective. And I understand that you're from a good school. Okay, you're from Jamaica College, and I'll tell you why I said that. My brother went to Jamaica College. So, I mean, but we know that you're doing quite a bit of work at Jamaica College as it relates to STEAM. So tell us a little bit about, one, your reaction to the presentation today, and just how important this kind of discussion is as we advance discussions about education in Jamaica.
All right, good afternoon, everyone, or is it evening now?
Still afternoon.
Still afternoon. All right, good afternoon, all protocols observed. What resonated with me was the innovation aspect of his presentation. Now, in the schools, when we're pushing STEAM, we normally talk about invention. And so the teachers and the students feel the pressure as if they have to create something from scratch. And that's what makes it feel so difficult to implement. But when we think about the creativity that fosters the innovation. You know, that's a different spin on it, where you don't necessarily have to create something from scratch, but look at something that already exists and amend it to fix some problems that we're having in society. So I really appreciated that point right there.
Put your hands together for her, Chanel Bennett Edwards. And her area is technology, and she's from Jamaica College. Let me also invite Wendy Crawford Williams, science and technology educator at Four Paths Primary School, to also add to the discussion. Put your hands together for her, ladies and gentlemen.
Good evening, all. Well, I'm a new convert to STEAM. I was STEM all the way, and I was saying, why arts? Because it's inevitable that you're going to do the arts, because you have to do the arts to communicate the product that you're making, and you have to, whether it's language, the aesthetics of it. So I'm saying the arts too enough. Why? You know? But I've never looked at it through the lens that inclusion for our students who are neurodivergent, for students who that's their intelligence. So I loved what you did, because I'm seeing it now in a whole other light, even more so. I've always believed, though, that STEAM, let me remember to say STEAM, is the best academic representation of natural life. Because if you're in the kitchen, you're cooking, that's chemistry, that's biology, that's math, that's all of that. So when I look at it as an educator, the children in the classroom, when you bring STEAM and you remove the boundaries of the subjects, this child is going to learn. But you see, you didn't like math, but you were good at it. Me never like it, was not good at it. And it was psychological. But if I was given the opportunity to do STEM, I would have learned math without having it being called STEM. Math, sorry, right. And so when I look at the children, it's like hiding the veggies in their favorite meal. So you bring this whole meal to them. They're not learning math and social studies and science. They're solving a problem. And there is something for every child to interact with and engage in. And then they eat the parts that they don't like while eating the parts that they do like. So I'm glad I was here. My resolve is now strengthened. I'm the STEM lead at my school, and, you know, teachers, STEAM, thank you. We don't do anything if it doesn't translate into improved PEP and CSEC results. So, am I right? So, my task is to show them how this can improve their own results as teachers. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. And of course, one of the very important roles that STEAM will play in the classroom is to help to foster this ethos of critical thinking, because it forces our students, or it forces us, because we're all students of life, and we learn every single day, it forces us to think critically beyond what we can see. And the arts is also in the kitchen as well too, you know, because I thought you were going to bring that in, because we eat with our eyes, and we want to see that plate being put together a particular way. So it's all there. It's all in that steamed rice plus in the conversation. Let me also bring in April McIntosh, Creative Executive Officer. Niche is April. All right. And Dr. Clover Hamilton Flowers. Love to hear from you as well, Dr. Flowers. Put your hands together for her. Curriculum specialist and educator.
Thank you so very much. It was really inspirational. Whole lot of just ideas hitting me, my own stories, you know, just there. And I really, really appreciate the value that was actually placed on collaboration and also helping us to look at creativity in a different way. I found myself thinking about what we call learning style, and I could literally see different learning styles coming out. And even when people are thinking that to be a kinesthetic person, the movement kind of person, that it is not creativity, it is literally creativity. But what has been happening in education is that we oftentimes use learning style to help people to drill, wrote, see if they can remember, prepare for the exam, as opposed to even using this as a way of helping to just embrace their identity and that which makes them unique. So the point that you raise about pulling on interest, making sure that people are collaborating, and when we think about solving problems, we can't do it alone. And this makes every single discipline that is a part of the National Standards Curriculum very, very important. Even those that you would not see would be under the umbrella of STEAM.
That's right. Yep.
Every discipline is important to create that context and deal with the ethics, and I could go on and on and on.
Thank you so very much. So, if you would have, in 10 seconds or 30 seconds, any final words that you'd like to share with the audience here or online before we close the panel?
No, I mean, the only thing I'd say, it's been a pleasure to be here. I've really enjoyed, also in a room who are clearly people who are very passionate about education, passionate about the next generation and the future and harnessing their potential. And so, you know, the fruits of what we've done today, we won't really know the results of that until many, many years down the line. But I'm just glad I played some small role in helping that come to fruition. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together once again. We thank you so very much for sharing with us. So, if nothing else, I know each and every one of you in this room see the importance of the work that you're doing. And in the meantime, let me come to Dr. Gordon, who I know is certainly an important part of our education system and certainly working with our educators, the Jamaica Teaching Council. So tell us how important you found this discussion this afternoon.
Thank you very much. I found it very interesting. Reference was made to the first engineer in Egypt. Yes. And you know, the Europeans don't tell you that when they went to Africa, it was already civilized. We are given the impression that civilization started somewhere in Europe, which is not true. So that part of it, the reality, brought to the forefront the reality of who we are. When it comes to STEAM, in Jamaica, for example, I'd like to say, well, I was educated a long time ago, but we had a slate, and the slate is the closest thing to the computer. The difference, it did not have a hard drive, but it had a soft drive upstairs here in the brain. And might need to tell a few people in the room what the slate is. What is a slate? The real slate, let me start up. The real slate is a rock, a kind of rock. And the original slate, we had that rock. You write on it with a chalk, and then you have to rub it off with a slate pencil. You had to rub it off. So everything had to be stored upstairs. That's where we had the drive. And in that education that we got, we almost sang everything. Because when it's test time, you have no document to go back to. And we actually learned through singing. So the timetable, 2 1 2, 2 1 4, and you sing it, you sing the whole mathematics program. And so learning was fun and easy. And then we got sophisticated with new maths, and you have to understand, and you stop singing and dancing. And then you ask the children, do you like school? Exactly. So I was so fascinated by your relationship between music and all the other subjects. Engineering, the science. When I was a science teacher, I used to be, I taught my students to sing the periodic table, because there was no way they were going to learn it. And if you don't know the periodic table, your chemistry is going to be slow. All of the calculations. And I taught them to sing. I taught them music. And the children, I found that there was a relationship between music and the performance in sciences. Many years later, I saw research that said that. So I was very, 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 very pleased with your presentation, because you established that connection between the arts and the science, engineering, and the mathematics. Thank you very, very much.
And thank you, Dr. Gordon. I mean, for sharing some insight. The software that's up in our head that keep the information. And the reality is, but you're so right. I mean, now we find that, and I mean, even for myself, I have to be a little bit more deliberate in trying to absorb and remember all of the information. And when my grandmother would tell me about slate and other things that she remembers, I mean, it's so important for us to now get to a place where we intrinsically encourage some of those same techniques to ensure that our students are applying all of that knowledge. Because one of the conversations my colleagues from university will say to me, and we'll talk about it all the time, is that when you go to university, many times you don't actually feel like you learn the content. You pass the exam, and you get the first class honors, but when you ask them about the things, and even in my own work, when I work with students coming in, when I ask them to apply the things that they learned, they've not actually learned them SWAT. But I think STEAM will help us to build in that ability to apply and to recall, so we can see not the thing moving from theory to actual solutions. So ladies and gentlemen, very important work that you are doing as educators and as stakeholders in this room. So give yourselves a round of applause. And speaking of our stakeholders, this afternoon we are going to be recognizing a few educators who were involved in, or who were certified in our 1962 STEAM pilot program. Are we excited about that? Oh no, so excited. Now, the Ministry of Education, Skills, Youth and Information, in partnership with 21st Century Education, instituted the phased implementation of the 1962 STEAM pilot program across 42 schools, and that's 8 primary and 34 secondary schools in the 7 regions across this country from May 2023 to present. Now, the key components of the pilot include the establishment of STEM/STEAM clubs and the completion of school-based STEAM projects, the participation in online STEAM courses for both students and teachers, and a core requirement of the pilot was the professional certification of STEAM lab teachers through the completion of 8 structured professional development PD courses. These courses were designed to strengthen practice, promote design thinking infused instruction, and deepen the integration of STEAM across the curriculum. Now, ladies and gentlemen, to date, 31 educators from cohort 1 have successfully completed all required professional development courses, and therefore they are eligible to receive the STEAM certification, and an additional cohort of educators is scheduled to be trained and certified during the 2025-2026 academic year. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I invite our Parliamentary Secretary, Senator Marlon Morgan, to come forward, who will be handing over these certificates to the educators. Some of them are in the room, but as I said to you, I know our educators are ardently preparing our students for tomorrow's exhibition, so a few of them are not here, but we are so happy to be officially handing over these certificates. Put your hands together for our Parliamentary Secretary in the Ministry of Education, Skills, Youth and Information. And you'll continue that applause as I invite Chanel Bennett-Edwards to come forward. And as I said, she's from a good school. All schools are good in Jamaica. But my brother at home from Jamaica College was cussing me. But I tell people I went to a great school. And I know there are few people from my school in the room. I'll not say anything because all schools are great. I won't get myself in trouble. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Chanel Bennett-Edwards. Keep that smile going as we invite Carla Bradshaw Graham, and I need you to give her a round of applause as she comes as well. Recognizing our educators who've successfully completed the certification. And of course, their PDs or professional development sessions included the urgency of STEM. As I invite Shamika Brevet, Revit, my apologies. They also completed certification in the 21st century classroom. Put your hands together for Janice Brown Henry. They also completed a course that looked at the 21st century learner, and that's part 1, which looked at making learning rigorous, authentic, and connected. And of course, in the context of the ease of access to information, I understand why that need to make learning rigorous and authentic is so critical. As we welcome Daniel Christian. They also participated in the 21st Century Learner Part 2, Generative AI in PK-12 education. So artificial intelligence certainly involved in the learning. Put your hands together, ladies and gentlemen, for Wendy Crawford Williams. So we see that our educators are equipped with information on how to utilize artificial intelligence in the classroom, as they also learned normalizing a culture of STEAM through design thinking infused with feedback and assessment. Put your hands together for Sasha Gay Edwards Green. Dressed true to her name. Of course, the course also included, well, before I tell you what else it included, let's put our hands together for Chevelle Gordon. So they also learned the 21st century classroom prioritizing DTIP instruction through art integration and STEAM education, another important course. As we invite Candicia Price Ashman. And the final of the 8 courses that they concluded in this pilot was designing deeper learning, integrating DTIP and depth of knowledge across core disciplines. Richard Reed is our next recipient. So after successfully completing the pilot, 31 educators are being awarded with their certificates this afternoon. Bobette Richards. And of course, just to let you know what the certificate says, it says Certified Emerging STEM Leader. This certifies that the recipient has successfully completed the Emerging STEM Leader Professional Development Program and is officially recognized as Certified STEM Leader by 21st Century ED. And that's of course one of our partners, 21st Century Ed, one of our partners in this project. As we welcome Asha Sinclair. Keep that applause going, ladies and gentlemen, for Shauna Lee Smith. And our final recipient this afternoon, Tanya Taylor. Or is it Tanya? Did I get it right? Tanya? Tanya Taylor, so not too bad. Thank you so very much, Senator Morgan, and congratulations to our educators who have successfully completed the program. So with that said, ladies and gentlemen, it has been an absolutely amazing afternoon where we've fellowshipped in learning. Our stomachs have been filled with steamed rice. but most importantly, our minds have been engaged with important discourse about how we can advance in our classrooms the conversations about STEAM, and most importantly, how it links to us getting to the Jamaica we want to see, leaving no one behind, as we become the country, the place of choice to live, and retire. An important part, not officially on the Vision 2030 document, but critical, because if we're the place of choice to live, work, raise families, and do business, we must be the place to retire. And as we look to ensure that we move beyond all the challenges we're facing now, yes, we are out of the COVID-19 pandemic, but then came Hurricane Beryl, and then came Hurricane Melissa. We know that the work that you are doing as educators and stakeholders is so important as we advance these goals, and we ensure that in our own spaces, we bring STEM alive to our students, to our children at home, so we can all see ourselves in that mix, and we can ensure that we bring this STEAM conversation, which is a problem-solving and innovation-led conversation, to the world at large. So, with that said, at the end of this discussion, we know we cannot wait to see you tomorrow at the Expo. And of course, we look forward to seeing the work of our students on display. I know many of you will be there. I think it's at the Chinese Benevolent Association tomorrow. So we're looking forward to having you there. We're looking forward to seeing the work. And we say thank you to our stakeholders once again. Let's say, as I call their names, the Ministry of Education, Skills, Youth and Information, put your hands together for them. Of course, the British Council, put your hands together for them. As well as the National Education Trust, NET, put your hands together for them. And all of our stakeholders, we say thank you so very much to each and every one of you. So, with that said, of course, I want to say thanks to the members of the media who are also in the room, who will be helping to ensure that those who were not able to join us this afternoon will be able to get the message that STEAM is real and STEAM is important as we advance these goals. So, of course, as we invite you to join us on the outside for cocktails, those of you at home, you won't get any of the cocktails, but you have the conversations. We thank you so very much for joining us. We say thanks to our friends from the JIS. And we want to also, before we go, ask our stakeholders in the room to put your hands together for our friends at e-learning, and Mr. Lee's at the front of the room, but e-learning is a very valuable and important partner, and we say thank you so very much to them and all other stakeholders. So with that said, I know we'll have some key photos to take, but thank you so very much for your attention, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Javon Keys. Until next time, be safe and keep steaming. Thank you so very much. So as we're steaming ahead, I'm inviting all our educators who were recipients of certificates this